Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay and Tim Hannon. What's up, gentlemen?
Hello.
He said, "What's up?" Tell him what's up. Don't just say hello. What's
what?
up, Tim?
I got some new windows today. It's been a busy day. There you go. I mean, I didn't put them in.
Is it so you can see your failures better?
No, that's a mirror. Jack.
That's a, yeah,
it's a mirror. You're so close.
Yeah.
So close.
I don't know.
I guess there are some situations where it could be a window.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be yourself. It could be things that you've done.
I can look out and see how bad my backyard is, and be like, "Oh wow, that's a horrible."
Your failure at taking care of your backyard.
There you go.
Always,
Yep.
always.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know.
Why pay someone else to do it? Because I'm not good at it. Know your strengths, kids. Know your strengths.
I'm not good at it either, but I also don't pay someone else to do it, so it just looks bad. But it's in the back of your house, so who sees that anyway?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, my wife, and so she lets me know. So
that's good.
My dogs see it when they go back there. They tell me back. They tell me about it. They judge me for it.
They give you that dog, puppy dog look like.
Yeah.
Really?
not the only thing they're judging you for.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me pee out here in these conditions
And this garbage pit.
This is outrageous. I don't think I've seen a pissed off dog that's a pet like ever.
Oh, you're really lucky. I've been bit by dogs. Like I've gotten in a tussle with a dog before.
Saying
so
their general disposition is very favorable.
Yeah, sure.
In my experience. So,
okay, you're lucky then.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
This has been the fifth dog.
The fifth dog. Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Yeah, that's right. Stay cool, fruit mat.
There you go. That one actually has a dog on it, so that's entirely
I know.
Appropriate.
Justified. All right, everybody. See you next week.
Yeah. All right. How about we do? So we are going to talk about Legion today. We're going to talk about, this is a 101 episode.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do Core 101. That would be core with a P in it, as in the rank core, not CORE. But yeah, we're going to talk about that. But first, let's do some housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
So this is where I do the housekeeping. Let's see.
Generally.
Yeah. Why don't you join us on Patreon? Just do it right now. Just go to Patreon. You've been listening to this podcast. There's a lot of you that listen to this podcast. Yeah. But only like a small percentage of you actually support us on the Patreon. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself, but Jay, I've definitely bought things from you guys. And you know what? Thank you. I appreciate that, but you should also join the Patreon. And so there's all kinds of things that you're enjoying for free. This podcast, the Fifth Trooper podcast, Legion 99 podcast, our Legion blog, and our 3 other podcasts that we have. We have a new Shatterpoint podcast. We have a Dungeons and Dragons Onslaught podcast. We have all kinds of podcasts that you're listening to and enjoying. So why don't you take a moment, show us how much you're enjoying this by donating $1 a month. That's all you need to do to keep this radio station and your local radio station going. $1 a month keeps us here at the Fifth Trooper Network going. It feeds Kyle's kids. It neuters Tim's dogs. And so this is the money that this goes to. So go to patreon.com.
Every month. I have so many dogs. Please help me.
But he won't if
Please.
he can get them neutered.
I can't keep up with it. I just can't.
He's just got to get them neutered. And if you give $1 a month, he'll be able to do it. At least
I am the problem. I'm what Bob Barker warned you about.
Yep.
That's $12 a year. That's like, it's like 2 GW paint pots.
Right.
All you got to have a
cups.
GW paint pot. Yeah.
You know, it's just not put as much whole oat milk in your coffee, one day. You could just use skim oat milk, and then that would save you $1, and then you could give that $1 to us.
Way to
And
stay
so-
hip, Jay. Staying hip with the times.
I don't know.
I don't think the skim is meaningfully cheaper than the.
It is. You don't know. What do you know about oat milk?
I buy oat milk.
You buy oat milk.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I try to avoid.
Then you
coffee.
should know. Then
Or not coffee. I
You
love
try to
coffee. I
avoid
try-
coffee.
See,
I
this
don't.
is-
I'm
I
gonna
haven't
be
had coffee
honest with
recently.
you.
No, I love coffee. I try and
Oh.
avoid dairy.
Oh, nice.
So I'm not like allergic to dairy, but
Yeah, I
I have
get
my
it.
reasons.
The way you said that leads me to believe that they're controversial. So I'm gonna move on. So yeah. So I can't stop thinking about that now.
That's utterly
All right, come on.
ridiculous.
I gotta move
Please.
on.
I'm gonna
Kyle,
just drink my oat milk here.
Kyle can't afford his oat milk. By the way,
There's
just
not
everyone
even
at
coffee
home.
in it. It's just pure oat
Yeah,
milk.
I had
That's it.
no idea.
Yep.
Oh yeah, what's that from The Office where she's like, "Oh, what do you got? Is that coffee?" He's like, "Milk and sugar," and she drinks it, and she's like, "Is this just milk and sugar?" He goes, "That's what I said." And so, no, I didn't even know Kyle drank oat milk, so that's great.
I do. Yeah.
Kyle needs to afford his oat milk because he has mental problems, and so you need to get him his oat milk
That
now.
just made such a jump. Wow. Damn.
Yeah. I got it.
Wow.
Don't worry. Hey, don't you worry about the jumps
I
I'm
have a
taking.
mental addiction to oat milk.
Yeah. All right.
That's
problem.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
for just $1 a month, you can help Kyle through this.
You could save him from his addictions.
If you don't donate now,
Yeah.
you'll forever wonder if your $1 could have made a
Right.
difference to save.
Do you want to see
That's
Kyle
right.
on the side of the road with a cardboard sign that says "Will work for oat milk"? Because I don't. So let's get him $1 a month. Yeah. And then, hey, you know what else?
That seems like a good shirt idea, actually.
I know. I
Will
was just thinking,
work for
like,
oat
can we
milk.
put that on alt art card, like
Yep.
like the
Yep.
Gav Tank alt art?
Sure. Or the the Tauntaun one. So here's what we do. All right. I need you, if you're listening to the audio version, why don't you go subscribe to our YouTube channel? We've got some great video content. We've been doing all these podcasts video wise. And
RPGs.
we've got a weekly when Evan feels like it, live cast RPG that we've been doing. Tim and I are part of that, and then Evan, what's his name are all part of it from the Fifth Trooper.
True.
And so that's been fun. Yeah, so come subscribe to YouTube too. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, if you subscribe to YouTube right now, today, this is Tuesday for you, I'm going to start doing unboxings, live paint videos, live list building videos of Ewoks. So if you're a huge Ewok fan like me, you should come over, subscribe to YouTube, and you'll know when I go live. And you can be part of my Ewok experience. It's the only thing keeping me playing Legion, everybody. It's the only thing.
Soon, 11 days, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have
11
some
days too
early.
soon.
I'm going to have some early so I can show you guys everything and you can ask me questions and we could just have general fun and merriment.
There's no fun to be had with those things.
I'm going to decimate everyone with them.
Devil bears.
I'm going to
That's what
become the
they are.
world champion and run pure Bright Tree list. It's going to be
Could
great.
be good.
You'll see. You'll all see.
I feel like
I'm not saying they're not good.
I feel like they're either going to be, at least Bright Tree is either going to be like really good or just absolutely terrible.
Oh
No,
yeah.
it's.
Guaranteed.
I've been looking at the units and I'm just like, oh god, this is either gonna be. I've been saying that same thing. I'm like, this is either gonna be really good or really bad. So
Yep.
we'll see. Anyways,
You can throw an ATST in there. So how bad could it be?
Yeah.
Right.
hey, exactly. Yeah, I think that's it. I got my
All right.
Ewok in for this podcast. So that's good. I got housekeeping done. So Kyle, why don't you go ahead and take back over the reins with your oat milk covered hands and get this going.
They're so milky white.
The milk goes directly from the carton into the coffee cup.
Yeah. Well, I've seen him milk an oat before, and it is something to be behold. I'll tell
That's
you
just
that.
what Big Oat wants you to think, man.
Yeah.
You
Think
can
for
make homemade
yourself.
oat milk in a blender with oats. I have done it.
No, yeah. I mean, that's the only way, I would think.
Yeah, I mean you don't squeeze them by yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you're like the Incredible Hulk, you could
Yeah.
create oat milk that way, but I can't.
Harness my anger at my blank red dice, and then I'll just squeeze all your oat milk for you.
Not
There
me,
you go.
Kyle. I drink 100% American made milk coming from the blessed cow. And I know the cow it comes from because I visit it, because I get my milk from a farm.
There you go.
Nerd.
We drink regular milk too. It's my kids especially.
Sure you do.
They down the we're large consumers of milk. Don't fear.
Oh, look at him backtrack. Big Milk is the side of his head with a gun.
Please don't sue me, Big Milk. We
And
still
all those
buy- we
millions of
still buy milk.
dollars on commercials that they spent just advertising milk.
Just
No
milk.
brand, no other type, just milk. And
Just straight up
Kyle
milk.
went ahead and started talking shit and see what happens. Look how fast he turned around everybody. That was quick.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm getting a text message. Milk is great. I
Oh,
love
this
milk.
just in. We do have news, and it's that milk is amazing.
All right. How about we talk about
So-
Legion?
No,
Sure.
I'm doing everything to avoid it.
dip all your Legion minis in milk. It's
Yeah.
now a hobby cast. There you go.
Do you want to
There you
strip
go.
the paint off your minis? Milk.
Milk.
Specifically, the good kind.
You know what? That might work if you left them in there long enough.
Yeah.
It definitely would. Milk
Gross.
is slightly acidic.
Oh,
You know what really works? High concentrate alcohol. You go to like 99%. Whew, put them in there for an hour. That paint slides off.
I tell
Yeah.
you what, that's what we used to do down in Tennessee. We used to do a little bit of moonshine there. You know,
Mhm.
shake them up in a little mason jar. Yeah.
I believe it.
Chug it periodically.
You
Not
weren't
while
from
you're waiting
Tennessee,
for
though.
it.
You don't know anything about mason jars or moonshines, though. You're
Make
from
up
New
your
York, remember?
They don't have moonshine in New York.
No,
No.
they do.
No.
Up here.
No. No.
Come on over, buddy. I'll have some brought over. We got apple
No.
orchards. We get apple moonshine. It's good.
There you go.
Okay.
Can you make
sure.
moonshine with oats?
Probably.
There
I mean,
Oatshine.
if you wanted to, buddy.
This is like the meet the parents scene. You can make a moonshine with anything. you know?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
just make moonshine out of me. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at oat pumps. All right. Anyway,
That's never a word I thought I'd hear, but all right, here we are. Yeah.
You've heard it here first, folks. Oat
Pump
pumps.
oat pumps. All right. Legion. Yeah, we're gonna talk about core.
Yeah. So much Legion.
So let's get into our Legion 101 segment.
It's time for Legion 101. Classes in session.
Oh, core.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk kind of a two-part segment. The first part I don't think will be super long, but basically just generally what are core for, how do you use them, what role do they play in both list building and on the table, and then we'll just quickly walk through each faction and kind of what is the role of each core unit in the factions, because they're all kind of different. And then what is generally, because there are some like heavy weapon upgrades that are good and some that are bad on core. So we'll talk about that kind of stuff. We'll talk about the different core options as far as their competitiveness and such. So but first, what is the purpose of core in
Well,
Star Wars
Kyle,
Legion?
I'm going to tell you
Okay.
because I just looked it up.
Yep.
The word
Did you?
core, CORPS, is derived from the Latin word corpus, which means body. So it's just about throwing bodies at a problem,
That seems extremely appropriate.
right?
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the core units, they tend to be meatbags. Like they tend to be kind of one-dimensional in that their purpose is basically to they really have three purposes. They're thumbs,
Mhm.
by which we mean they can interact with objectives and they can score objectives. So they're important for that purpose. They attack things and they defend against things. And that's mostly it. Like you can add some additional functions onto them, sometimes with personnel options, most notably like medics and astromechs. But generally speaking, all the other options that you give core units tend to make them better at one of those two things, attacking or defending.
They're
you know,
also attacks too, not for nothing. Like there are attacks that you have to pay for every army you build. You got to bring your core, no matter what. You could have
you're required to
nothing.
bring three.
Yeah, nothing but heroes. You still got to bring 3 core.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
strange, right? Because they made the core unit CORP more of a CORE unit, which they,
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, okay. So I think originally when Alex designed this and when Luke was working on it, I think the idea was to be a lot like 40K or fantasy, where you've just got a lot of bodies on the field, right? It's meant to be this large scale strategic war game. Yeah. And I think the further and I don't blame anyone for this. I mean, because I think Alex and Luke did this too. But like the further we got into the game, because of how Star Legion works, or Star Wars, Star Wars universe is and works, is there's much cooler stuff outside of just the bodies, right? And so it just like, I think that the whole core text that Tim was just talking about made sense in the beginning. I don't think it makes as much sense today at where the game is today.
Well, and you see a little bit of that with, I think, with some of the battle forces coming out, right, where they let you rearrange. You still have to pay. You have to have some core, but you can have 2 core instead of 3. Like I'm thinking of 501st is only 1 core, isn't it? It's just
Two.
phase 2s. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to.
So yeah, not 2. So, but still, it's a reduced tax. So
Yep.
maybe there's a bit more of a movement towards that. Maybe that's how they get around that. But yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it made sense at first, and if you're going to keep it simple and you're going to keep it to like I think when it was like the Civil War factions, you're like, oh yeah,
Sure.
we're going to have to do a lot more like soldier type units, right? And I think
Mhm.
there's been a lot of opportunity even in the canon, as the canon has grown, to do more soldier like core units that has really been missed. Like, like I think Mimbam from Solo, like those Empire unit soldiers, that would have been a huge like
Mud troopers, man.
Mud troopers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been
Yeah.
an amazing core unit. There's
Well,
a
they
lot.
still could be, to be fair. We're not like, you still could have
I
it.
think that ship has sailed.
We'll see.
I mean, well, listen, as much as this game is about Star Wars as a whole, it also rides a lot on what the current marketing pattern is. There's no right, you know what I mean? It's not a random coincidence that Ewoks are coming out the same year as the 40th anniversary of Empire, right? Like
I mean, we know, so I sort of agree with that. We know from previous dev interviews that they're occasionally like mandated by LFL to do a certain unit or a certain theme. But it's also a little bit of like a push-pull where like previously they've come up with a unit concept and been like, is it okay for us to do this for Legion? And they've been like, sure. Even if that doesn't necessarily like perfectly align with the current marketing push.
Sure.
So it's a combination of both. I don't, at least using that as how it was done historically, I don't think that would like foreclose Mud Troopers being a thing if they went to Lucasfilm and were like, hey, we think this would be a great addition to Legion. Can we do Mud Troopers? Because sometimes it's both. Sometimes they're mandated to do certain things with a certain marketing push. Sometimes, it goes the other way.
And I think too, there could be maybe a piece to having units almost like on reserve, like creatively, like saying like, I'm picking on Mud Troopers just because what we were talking about, but to say with the marketing pushes, okay, here's the things we have to work on because this is what's new and fresh. But then if there's a lull, if again, for whatever they're designing, if there happens to be a bit of a marketing lull and they feel like, okay, there's nothing that really fits in Legion right now, then maybe we could pull up the mud, put them in your back pocket, so to speak.
I mean, look at Geonosians, right? There hasn't been like a huge marketing thing recently with Geonosians, but that's
yeah.
one of the new units that they've
That's fair.
Yeah,
talked about. That's
for
coming
sure.
out soon.
Yeah. It's
sure.
just okay. I think that's all fair, and I think the other thing too is there's this push from it seems like that they're pushing the mercenaries as the like, oh well, you could just put these in as a core unit, right? But they're not really. It seems like to me that I mean, because we know most of their releases probably for the rest of this year, based off of what they announced at Adepticon, right? So we've got a good idea of what's coming out the rest of this year. Bad Batch, Genosians, the second, not second sister, but one of the
Inquisitors.
the
Inquisitors,
Inquisitors,
yeah.
and there's
Or I
one.
guess, yeah, they just said Inquisitors. They didn't specify which ones. Yeah.
They had a picture of them because they're an operative.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
They're a
It looks like
two
fifth brother and
Was it not
seventh.
second sister?
no,
Oh,
it's not
seventh.
second
I don't know.
sister.
I lose
think
track
it's,
of
No,
who's
seventh.
whatever.
Seventh, maybe
Yeah.
seventh. Second was in the game.
Yep.
So yeah, seventh sister, but like none of those are like faction building core units, right? They're all Genosians may be core units, we don't know. Ewoks have core units in them, but they're not just rebels or just empire or just or just whatever CIS, I guess, for Genosians. But maybe Genosians will be. I have no idea, but it seems like they're more in this mercenary to fill those kind of like core slots now, which seems, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the mercenaries don't count towards your 3 though.
And I think that's a good
Right.
thing personally for
Yeah,
those
I
reasons.
agree.
I
I
think
agree.
that's
Yeah, I think
no,
it's
no,
good
no.
that
Yeah,
they
that
don't.
is good.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, and then two don't even. So Empire and Rebels are lucky enough to have 3 core units, but the other CIS and Guard don't have 3, right? They still only have 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the last release of a faction specific non-mercenary core unit we had was phase 2s back
Yeah,
in like
yeah.
what
Long time
2020
ago.
at this point.
I think it was before that.
No, it's before that.
It was way
2019.
before that.
Was it
'Cause it was
2019?
It was because there was supply issues for them, and
Yeah.
then the pandemic hit and then made it worse.
Yeah, but I thought it was maybe it was like early 20. Maybe I don't know. You're right.
Because
It's been a long time.
phase 2s and arcs both had issues with supply.
Right. It's been at least 3
Yeah.
years. Is the point?
Yeah, been a long time. Time. But to reiterate too, though, just to go back to what we were talking about before, of why core? Why do they matter? Who cares? Like, why don't I just bring 3 naked squads? I think I used to, and disclaimer, I used to be more on the camp of just bring 3 naked squads, and I think it does depend on your faction, which we'll go into here in a second. But I think with die pools being a lot bigger now, it's a little bit harder to justify that because they'll just get wiped off the map in one shot. But also, I mean, it's if you're gonna bring a hero kind of list, right, or a character heavy list or something like that, or even a special forces kind of list, you want those units, those more expensive units, to be doing something, probably attacking most of the time, right, or holding a specific point. Maybe not so much playing the objective itself, unless it works out to where you can do both. And so core, for me at least, fill that gap of like, okay, these guys can handle at least making sure I'm even on the objective. Maybe I'm not winning it, but they can make sure I got my objective, quote unquote. And now my characters and my special forces, what have you, those are the things that can then allow me to go and hopefully win. So it's, to me, the core are not so much the backbone, but they're the back line of most of my armies, depending on the faction, of course.
Yeah, I mean they're the dudes that do the normal stuff that your important stuff doesn't have time to do, basically. Like
Yeah,
if
'cause,
in
like,
recover, someone's got to pick up those boxes, those 2 boxes that are closest to your line.
right.
Well, Boba Fett or Anakin or whoever is out there trying to contest that middle box.
Mhm.
And VAPs, like someone's got to fix your VAPs, and
Yeah.
probably not going to be your Jedi sitting back there with a wrench, right? So,
Right.
yeah, it's you need bodies to do basic stuff like that, and you also need them just for attacking. Core units, when they're equipped with the right heavy weapon upgrades, tend to have fairly efficient attack pools for their cost. And
God, I completely disagree.
That's
what
because
about
you're
which
a Rebel
part?
player.
I think they are the worst. Like I go back to what Tim said. It's just like a tax that I have to play this game, and I don't want to use them. I don't even I would prefer if they just weren't even in the game.
That's because you're trying to make rebel lists, Jay.
Boom. He's right.
Empire too. But outside of
Empire, shores are good.
Blizzard Force.
Shores are good.
Storms are
Storms
fine.
No,
Storms are okay.
Oh,
Storms
you know
are
what?
okay.
I could say that about vets.
HH12s.
Vets are good.
Which is weird things.
No, vets are not good. Vets
Vets
are
are
acceptable.
What did you just tier list them at like a B?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
that's
decent.
acceptable.
Yeah,
C is acceptable. B is above average.
not for my degree.
I'm not
but
taking
okay.
C's in a competitive list.
Yeah.
You know what, Tom? I don't like your list building or your tier lists. So no, I okay. Let me say this. You guys can argue this, which you're going to, but yeah, no, I think core units are garbage, and I think that they shouldn't be a requirement to play in this game anymore.
Would you ever take a good Republic list with just 3 naked phase 1s and nothing else?
I don't know.
Can you build a good droid list with 3 naked B1s and no other core units?
I think so. I would prefer that I didn't have to.
3 naked B1s get shot off that. Never mind.
Okay,
Right,
how
that's
about
what I'm saying. Exactly.
Whatever.
Can
They're
you
just
build a Can you
attacks.
build a good droid list with no B1s or no B2s in it? Can you build a
I
good
think so.
Republic list with no
Yeah.
phase 1s or phase 2s?
I bet you Mike would love to have an all arcs list. Like yeah.
Yes, you
Yeah.
could probably build a 501st list that had no
Oh,
core in it.
wow.
That would be-
Well, there we are. So
but that's
Now-
also because the full arcs kind of fulfill the functions of core.
yeah.
in that.
Right. They do. And so that's
Sometimes.
what I'm no. That's what I'm saying. I think maybe I could see the argument for CIS. I don't know that CIS has enough outside of the core range to fulfill the needs. Maybe BX if you ran a full BX squad, but probably not. But all other of the 3 other factions, you absolutely could fulfill all your needs outside of the core units. And not battle forces, like put Blizzard Force to the side for just a second.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can come close with Republic list with doing like a Wookiee centric kind of list.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to bring the 3 phase 1s, but still, I still think the phase 1s serve a purpose. I mean, you throw a heavy on there, and then your Wookiees are getting them to fire support.
They serve a purpose because they have to. If I told you today, okay, listen to me. If I told you today, Tim, you don't have to bring any phase 1s or phase 2s. You could bring up to 5. I don't know the number that would make it playable, right? Let's just throw out whatever. You could bring up to X arcs and or Wookiees. You're telling me that you don't need that anymore. They don't need to serve a purpose because you can put Wookiees in there now, and you're running five Wookiees. Like, what's the number where it becomes?
Well, Wookiee. Don't get me started on Wookiees right now. That's a separate conversation. But yeah, it wouldn't be
okay.
Wookiees.
We don't need to go off the track.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, they're not needed. They're only needed because you have to have them in there, and you're telling yourself they serve a purpose because you have to put them in there.
I think it is very faction dependent. I think Republic core, even though there's only 2 options, not counting mercenaries, are super interesting. And especially now, yeah, I mean, Boyle makes it more interesting, but like there's so many interesting combos and ways you can put phase 2s and phase 1s. And that's part of the reason why right now I like playing Republic. It's not because they're stronger, it's because to me, Republic is the more interesting faction. Like I feel more rewarded when I play Republic, whether I win or lose. because it's just an interesting faction to have. And I think those core, again, let's just talk about Republic here. I think they're so integral to that process of, again, are they going to fire support? Not every GAR list, not every Republic list is focused on fire support.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
even if you're not fire sporting, you still want in my opinion, I still want the phase ones and
Well,
phase two.
right. But then it changes how you might build them and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But fundamentally, what I'm asking you, and maybe with GAR, because there is some interesting stuff going on that this is, yes, you would. But what I'm fundamentally asking you is if you could build a list today and not have to pay your core tax, wouldn't that be wouldn't your life be better?
No, I don't think so. There's two reasons for that.
No.
The first is I think generally you want them anyway. Like one of the reasons that Rebels somewhat recently, we'll see after the points update, but at least in recent history have struggled is because their core are bad and not because taking Naked core is not a part of that. Like if you were to be like, all right, build a Rebel list with no core in it, like you'd still struggle to build a pretty good list because core serve an essential function, generally speaking. But part two of that is coming from 40K, which at various times in its life cycle has had extremely like free form list building. That is a balance nightmare when you can like the minimum, having the minimum core thing is, and just minimum slot requirements generally is kind of a check on crazy skew lists that spam, or and there's always going to be some units that are a little bit better than others. That spam like overpowered units or come up with crazy combos that wouldn't be possible with more list building restrictions. So unless you're going to spend like a ridiculous amount of effort on balancing all those possible combinations, which look, if HMG wants to do that, more power to them. But I haven't like, we're not to the point even with minimum list building requirements where everything internal balance is great for all the factions. So like if you just introduce more freeform list building, that's just going to exacerbate those internal balance issues rather than improve them. So
I hear what you're saying, but what I'm saying is in a perfect world,
okay, which we don't live in,
Kyle, you're so exact. Numbers all got to match up, and they all got to add to 2. 1 + 1 is 2. I'm saying 1 + 1 is 3.
Jay. Okay.
Okay, but you're telling me, Kyle, you haven't been building a list and been like, oh man, I gotta put core in this. This sucks. I don't want to put these core in here. I'd rather spend these points on something else.
The only list I can think of where that happened was when I was building Republic Wookiee lists. And I think there's 2 facets to that. The first is that I'm not building those lists right now because Wookiees are bad. The second is that that's a relatively easy problem to solve with like a Wookiee battle force. I wouldn't want to just like remove the core restriction from the Republic faction. Make a Wookiee battle force where you can take Wookiee units that count as core units. Similar to how they did 501st, right? 501st doesn't need 3 core. They need some core, but you can still build a 501st list that's mostly ARC troopers, and I think that's fine because they have other restrictions placed on them, right? They have a limited unit roster, etc. So I think in the context of like a Wookiee battle force where you have a limited unit roster, maybe some of your other slots are restricted in some way, you can't take every possible character. I think it's fine to be like, yeah, all right, fine. You don't have to take phase ones if you don't want to. But I wouldn't just like, blow up the standard list building by saying.
And it goes back to, like we mentioned before, like I don't want to have to spend my expensive units on doing menial tasks. So even though, yes, I want more cool, strong units on the table for sure, but not if they're just going to sit in the back and tap evaporator the whole game. Then what's the point?
And menial, I think, is the wrong word for those because they're still important.
Yes,
yeah,
sorry.
you mean
That's
the things that are
yeah,
integral
the
to
things that
winning the
win
game?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I understood. But still, you don't want
it doesn't require the skills of your special forces unit to
Yeah.
tap
Right.
that
If
battle.
anything's
I don't need a
menial
full
around
arc
here, it's
sitting on the
you,
back.
Tim.
Unskilled. You could call it the unskilled labor of the Legion game. How
You
about
could
that?
also call me the unskilled labor of
but yeah,
Legion, but sure.
and I guess you're using hard examples of like, oh, I don't want to have my, OP Luke back tapping the Vaps, right? That's not what he is supposed to be. But you know what? If I could run a full commando unit instead of running core units, they're worth doing that with.
I mean, maybe they could do a battle force.
Maybe,
like
but
501st for Rebels, where
that's
you
what
can
I'm
take a bunch
saying,
of full
right?
commandos.
Like
want.
if we could have fine, don't rewrite the game, but create battle forces where I don't have to take core units anymore. Because there's, I mean, dude, and maybe this is coming from somebody who is running double heavy or always like trying to do like some crazy like hero hammer thing. Like I'm just like, core units are just in my way to doing what I want to do right now with this list.
Give me an
And then I
Empire
kill your
list where
core
I can
units,
take
and then I capture your objectives.
like
Thank you.
what's the Endor one?
If you
Tempest Force.
survive,
Give me Tempest Force where I can take 6 speeder bikes. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Right. I don't need to tap anything. I just
special forces.
I just run you over.
Yeah, speeder bikes is core.
Yeah.
Please and thank you. No, all right.
Don't you try to get me off topic. Don't
well,
you?
I'm trying to get us on to the next time.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a wild mood right now. Let's see. What's the next topic?
Well, just basically walking through the factions and talking briefly about the core situation for each faction and
Rebels trash next. All right, that's
well, Bright Tree's going to be so good.
Let's open with Rebels.
Yeah, actually,
and we can talk about Bright Tree too, but let's talk about OG Rebels first.
Okay.
So Rebels trash. I think that's fair with respect to 2 of the 3 core units, and that's Rebel Troopers and Fleet Troopers. I think you can make a case in some situations for Rebel Troopers with the DLT still, but
just do Vets.
I don't know.
Vets will do it better.
Vets will probably do it better for what is ultimately a cheaper cost, because Vet plus MK2 is significantly cheaper than like 2 Rebel Troopers with heavy weapon upgrades.
And that MK2 is a nice control piece too.
It is. So yeah, the quote unquote standard Rebel build right now for core units is some combination, usually a total of 4. So 2 Vets, 2 MK2s, of Vets and MK2s with the heavy upgrade for Vets. Rebel Troopers are just not, like, since the vigilance increase and the situational increase, in order to make them like durable enough to not immediately die, you have to pay a lot of points, and you also have to have 2 command slots, 2 separate command slots on 2 separate commanders, because you can't take 2 copies of vigilance on the same character, which is just really restrictive, especially when Cassian is so good right now and he doesn't have a command slot. So that's the big reason that Rebel Troopers are not great right now. They got hit really hard by that dodge spam nerf back in the end of 2022, and they haven't really recovered, is the short version. And even before that, it was kind of like DLT or bust. The Z6 is pretty bad on Rebel Troopers. The other ones are like even worse. So, and then fleets. I mean, fleets are an assault unit with white saves and no way to manage their courage. So, you're not paying a lot for range 2 Pierce, but if you can get them on target before they die or get suppressed, more power to you. Most people can't. So yeah, fleets are like, if you're going to take your naked core J, fleets are an interesting choice for that, because at range 2 they're throwing 2 white apiece, which is actually pretty decent for 40 points. You're going to get more spike damage that way than just your boring old Rebel Troopers with 4 black dice if you're taking something naked. But yeah, I think for the most part for Rebels it's Vets and MK2s. And you brought this up before the cast, Tim, but we should probably use this opportunity to talk about emplacement troopers and how detachments work, because this is a 101 episode.
Yes. So your emplacements, everyone, counts for mortars and for Mark IIs. Get placed. Yep. Speed 1, not range 1. Had that actually come up recently too in an event.
Yep.
Speed 1 from your unit, from your vet or your shore, respectively.
Can you put them at a different elevation?
Oh God, I always elevation placement rules always get me.
Okay, you used to be able to. I genuinely do not know the answer to this question.
I really don't remember anymore. I think it's as long as it's shorter than the silhouette, or not. Yeah, as long as the elevation is shorter than the silhouette, I think. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think the problem was
emplacement silhouette's huge now. So
yeah,
I'm gonna look this up because this is a
yeah,
101 episode.
yeah, you should.
Yeah,
We should
that's
know
a
that. But I
good
would
point.
say that was a trap, anyways. That always felt like a trap because
then they can't climb.
They can't climb. Yeah,
right.
So,
so wherever unless there's like some sort of incline or like a hill or something, right? You look that's where they're going.
Within height 1.
Within height
1.
Yeah. That's I think
1.
how it was before. And so like yeah.
It's
and that
rare.
by the way,
It's rare that you're going to want to do that unless they're like just completely just going to camp that one point and never move. Or if you're, sometimes you play a map that has like a whole like plateau at a certain elevation, and that's fine too. But
and also since this is 101, that happens after scout, so you can if you have advanced positions or if you have recon intel or whatever, getting scout off of those troopers, you can actually get your heavy weapon there closer into the battle through.
And if you're happening to play advanced positions, your Mark II or your mortar would then also scout after being placed down.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, you don't. There's no place in deployment zone restriction on detachments. So even without scout, you can still drop your mortar or MK2 like outside your deployment zone as long as it's within speed 1 of your unit leader. So,
but the other big thing we wanted just to touch on briefly is that, and remember, emplacement troopers cannot perform objective actions.
They do not have thumbs.
Cannot. No thumbs. Their thumbs are busy pulling triggers, either
or
mortar triggers
carrying
or
heavy things.
Mark IIs. That's right. Yeah. So they cannot attach your evaporator. They can't grab a box. Important to note. They still count for KP, which is also important to note, because I've also seen it on the flip side where people will forget that they count for KP
and intercept and breakthrough.
And
they count for everything else. They just can't pick stuff up. Yeah.
No objective actions.
Yeah, they're too busy. I'm impressed that one guy can like fire, reload, spot 4, and carry the mortar and the MK2.
Or move, set up, in the standby. It's very impressive. Very impressive.
There really is. Yeah. All right. Should we talk about Ewoks real quick? They're not out yet, but Ewoks obviously have core units, which are the spear dudes. The skirmishers is their official name. They do not count towards your minimums for normal rebels, but obviously in Bright Tree Village they do. It's a pretty one-dimensional choice. They're a melee unit, like a pure melee unit. They're melee B1s, basically, that do not ignore suppression.
But that do have low profile.
They do have low profile.
Yes.
They do have access to ways to ignore suppression, particularly C3PO.
Yes.
With Compel.
Yes.
And their attacks are significantly better than B1s once they actually get to poking range. So, they have all those things going for them, obviously. But I don't know what else there is to say about them except they're essentially a W key core unit. And what we mean by when we say W key, if on your keyboard in games where you have WASD, W is usually like the forward key. So for W key unit, you push that key down and you just hold it. You hold it down.
Just go run that way and good luck. You get a blessing from the commander whose name escapes me all of a sudden. Logray, and then maybe Wicked will run with you, and you just go. You just go.
Godspeed.
That's right.
Get those pointy sticks. Get those pointy sticks on target.
That's right. They do pierce once they get there. So
if you take the axe.
if you take the guy.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah, and I think maybe to tie it into like the earlier thing that I was saying about like not wanting to take core units, I think this is like one of those areas where maybe this is the way to go, where the Ewok skirmishers are very similar to the slingers, with the slingers having a couple added keywords and a different weapon, right? They have a long range weapon versus a short range, and so like a melee, and so like maybe that's something that you could do, right? Like you say, oh yeah, if you want to not, you could put a stormtrooper, or like there's some like something additive to that where I'm not really thinking of the right thing right now, but like, they're basically the same. They just have slight changes, which makes one core, one, special forces. So there could be something interesting with that too. And I think that's why they work so well, is that, or will work so well, is that they're very similar. All the units are very similar. You're just adding a couple more things. Like, oh, this is my long range one that's got target and surge one, independent surge one instead of nothing.
Yeah, they seem more similar than most like core unit special forces pairings.
Yeah.
But I think that's okay.
Yeah. I think it's good.
All right, should we move on to Empire?
Sure.
We
OG
can.
to OG. Yeah.
OG to OG. Yeah. So snows I think are still probably Blizzard only. I've seen people taking like naked snows occasionally.
I think you have naked snows, you have snows with Dell as an option, depending on I think it's list dependent. I don't love Dell.
No, it's
but
not. That's bad.
Wow.
I do not like. Okay, let's talk about Dell and Gideon.
I don't know.
Kyle telling
know
you
that.
what's bad, huh?
Because that repair is also nice. But anyway,
it is. But you can take Dell in the unit that he belongs in, which is Inferno Squad.
that's only if you can afford to take Inferno Squad. But yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, all right. Dell is bad outside of Inferno Squad for one reason. Two reasons, really. They're both related. The first is marksman, and the second is aim access. Otherwise, he's just, two black dice he's a sniper with no sharpshooter, basically.
Yep, that's true.
Which, two black dice, like you're never going to punch through cover with that, with no marksman. And if you're throwing him into a pool with a bunch of other stuff, then you're wasting his high velocity. I get that he is lethal, but again, you don't have the aims to power that keyword.
Yeah. You're going to spend your aim trying to roll for crits or something like that.
Yeah, right. You're going to spend your aim trying to get through cover.
Yeah.
And you don't get the free aim from retinue to get that pierce. So personally, I think Dell is bad outside of Inferno. I think
Dell's bad even in Inferno, but anyway.
No, he's not.
Okay.
Somebody argue with him, Tim. Just don't say okay. Give him your reasoning. Why do you think
he's bad in Inferno?
I just think he's a joke of a character, but he's just awful. I've never had success with Dell ever.
Okay. But I like Dell. I've had good success with Dell.
He's the worst part of Inferno.
Really? I think he's like the reason that you take Inferno.
Okay.
Because he is range 5. He's got high velocity. He gets an extra aim from retinue, which you can use to power his pierce. And then you can take an aim action or use any of the other myriad ways that Inferno Squad can get aims like Tactical Strike. To turn that one of those two black dice into a crit. And he picks up, if you're outside range 3, he picks up a model every turn, basically, in a way that ignores most defensive tech, in like a similar way to Cassian or Echo. And then once they're inside range 3, you're talking about 6 dice, again, with those aims for marksman. And then he adds Pierce to that excellent pool. So, yeah. Anyway, Gideon, I know people have taken Gideon in Shores. I guess I could see it if you're trying to like chain an extra order. The problem is that you're not taking a T21, and Gideon's pool by itself is just a DLT 19.
Yeah.
At range 3.
Yep. No,
so
that's for sure. And then also you're losing if let's just argue if you're running 2 Shores, 2 Mortars, you're losing one of your coordinate to an emplacement trooper.
Right.
I mean, you could still use it, but yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think shores are good. C21B is still great.
Yeah.
I prefer to run shores primarily in situations where I have a plan to give them orders. Like if you're running them, and I personally, look, I know that Luke Cook does this and loves it. I do not like shores in double bounty because you're almost never have a way to give them orders
Yeah.
in that
No, that
situation,
makes
and then
sense.
you're wasting target, and then often you have suppression issues with them too because they are an expensive Courage 1 core unit. So you need either strict orders with face ups, or you need like some source of Inspire.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean like a generic officer with Inspire 1. But shores and mortars are good. Mortars are great. Mortars are amazing for what they do.
Mortars are great. Yeah.
Shores obviously give you access to the mortar. And then I think storms are good with either the HH12 or the T21.
Yeah. There was a time in my life when I was more in the RTC camp, but I think that these days that critical
You need
is kind of
critical.
nice. Yeah.
You're
I
not going to
agree.
get out of cover shots.
No, I agree. It was like I said, there was
yeah.
that time has passed for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's I think that's Empire Core.
I will say too, I think Empire Core are the core where I am the most inclined to take officer upgrades.
Yes. 100%.
I have not done it in recent memory, but if I do build a list, like it's something I actually consider, whereas I don't think for anything else I actually, well, that's not true, other than mercenaries, but again, I'm not thinking about that right now. But yeah, for the main factions, I can't think of another one that'd take the commander.
And I think that's primarily because I think there's two reasons for that. The first is there's no natural way to get Courage 2 Empire Core. And the second is I think the Courage 1 is like the primary drawback of Empire Core.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, like with Republic, you can take phase 2s if you want Courage 2 core.
Right.
Rebels, they don't help rebel troopers with their primary problem, which is durability.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the beauty of Empire Core is that they are versatile. Again, I don't think they're as interesting as Republic Core, but they are surely maybe the most versatile.
They're definitely the most like basic in that they just naturally have passable defense.
Yeah.
And they have access to good weapons with critical.
Yeah.
So they don't require really a lot of support.
Yeah.
Other than making sure that they get their actions, whether that's via compel or inspire or making them Courage 2 with officers or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there's Empire as a faction has a lot of ways around that Courage 1 as well.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Those the OG factions, Republic.
For the Republic. I love my phase 2s.
Okay, go on.
If I can ever put phase 2s into a list, I do. I always try, like, I love 5s into phase 2 because then you get Courage 3, arguably a surging red save unit. I mean, it's only one surge, but still like a surging red save. Normally there's more than one surge around, so you're like, it's a great unit to lead from the front. I wish they had better heavy options. I'm not a huge fan of the mortar, but I do love now Boyle with a mortar in a phase 2 because he can sit in the back, he can shoot the mortar, and he's still safe to where he can do Boyle things. And it's primarily the biggest thing for the mortar in that is that it's 18 points for another body to boil with. Yeah, to boil with, right? So it's the shooting with the mortar is very secondary for me in that kind of structure. But also, like, I've run lists, like especially if I run Yoda Anakin or something like that, anything that's really point heavy, I try and fit in phase 2s because naked phase 2s, if I'm gonna run naked core in this day and age, I want it to be a naked phase 2 because it's got the surge. So again, one surging defense at least, and Courage 2 just built in. But no, I love them just because they have so much versatility. And again, if I'm gonna run naked ones, I'm gonna run naked core, I should say. I'm gonna run naked phase 2s because those, in my experience, have been the most versatile because they can just eat their own surge and stay alive longest. I mean, they still fall to pierce, but But that courage 2 and that surging red save, you can go take a point in the middle, and I feel okay telling a phase 2 to go run to the middle.
I think I would say they are definitely probably out of all the core units, the one I would comfortably say you could take naked and you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, but that's 60 points for a naked unit.
It's better. It's only 8 points more than a phase 1, though.
Yeah, but 8 points is a lot. And also phase ones can do the old like dodge aim token generation for the rest of your clones. And generally they can do the objective things just fine too. Like you don't.
Yes, these are all true, Kyle.
Maybe,
but
they're still more susceptible to suppression.
Sure, but most
hardy. I said that, hardy phase 2s are probably the most hardy naked trooper that you're gonna be able to put on the board.
Yes.
I think most objectives, most backline objectives can be done by a courage 1 unit just fine.
Yes.
I also think to the extent that like frontline objectives need to be done like by a core unit like hostage, then it upgrades their courage for free anyway, courage 2. So
True.
Granted, a courage 3 hostage is better than a courage 2 hostage, but I think in that situation it's still fine to have a naked phase 1 do it. And 8 points is a lot, especially in a Republic list where you tend to be scrapped for points. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think they should get any cheaper because I think they need to be. I don't know. I think they're 8 points better than a phase 1.
Oh yeah, totally agree. But I would go further and just stick a Z6 on them if I'm taking a phase 3 unit.
I agree partially. My only hesitation with that is that how much more expensive their Z6 is. A Z6 phase 2 at that point, then we're really talking about how many points are adding up compared to a phase 1 Z6, especially if we're just going to fire support. Now, if that phase 2 is going to lead from the front with a Z6, that's fine. I agree. But if I'm just going to be hanging back and fire supporting, I just need a phase 1 for that. I'm good.
Sure, but that's why you mix. I mean, ideally, like when I'm taking, when I'm running a Republic list, I usually mix them.
Same.
I like to have 1 to 2 phase 2s for that surge, and because you need courage 2 core units to do the attacking thing. And then I usually have like a phase 1 RPS because that's kind of a natural fire support unit, right? You've got your impacts to add on to other pools. It's a unit that is relatively stationary, so being range suppressed 4 is not as big of a deal for them. Range 4, right? And then to the extent that I still need to fill out core units, I'll either take pikes, which we can talk about, or which obviously don't count towards your minimums. That's assuming you have at least 3 clone units already.
Right.
But pikes are great in Republic because of things like Exemplar, where they can use those extra tokens. They're also, for the price point, it's 86 points for like the standard pike build with the capo upgrade and the disruptor, and you're talking about that's 1 point cheaper than a phase 2 Z6, and it's another courage 2 unit with a good attack, which is pretty good value. So usually, and then if you're taking extra phase 1s, I like to give them captains, because phase 1s without some kind of suppression mitigation other than your RPS unit are very sad.
That's fair.
That's at least 74 points for a courage 1 core unit.
I was just going to say, I did actually have a phase 1 Z6 at the last tournament I was at up in Canada that had, I believe it was 12 or 13 suppression by the time he died, because he just kept fire supporting and he wouldn't go to, because Boyle was next to him. So Boyle was like, I got you. And just heavy cover Boyle. And he's just like, nah, I'm good. Surges to share.
I thought you couldn't fire support anymore if you were panicked.
Wow, Tim, you've been cheating.
I thought that was the workaround for panic.
It's always been the case.
Oh, used to be.
Oh,
I don't think that changed.
You're such a disappointment to us, Tim.
That's fair.
Interesting. Maybe not. It's so hard to find things these days. I don't know.
Would be
I thought they
panic.
changed that.
Oh, I didn't think so.
Yeah, so it's because a unit that fire supports must be able to perform a ranged attack.
Really?
And if you're panicked, you can't perform act. Well, let's see.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, get him.
I feel like that
Hmm.
one would have gotten
All right.
more attention.
Yeah, maybe I remembered that wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think
Because
maybe
then,
you can still do that.
if that's the case, then everyone I know has been cheating. We've all been cheating together. It's
Yeah.
not cheating if the whole community does it.
I can't remember where I saw
Cheating
that.
if we're all doing it.
Yeah, because it's not an action, and the panic
Right.
the panic restriction is on actions. So
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, but yeah,
All right.
but yeah, I agree. Again, I think they're interesting. I do think I wish I could see some more use for that shotgun guy on the phase one. He's interesting. I built a list just today with him in it, with Rex trying to take that clankers. Maybe you could extend it to range 3 for at that range. I don't know. It's nice to have Pierce on a red save unit against other red save units. That's my only thought, but I don't know. I don't know.
Say
Boyle's
I don't
great. Just
know
bring
one more
Boyle.
time.
Just bring Boyle. That's all that matters.
I don't
That
know.
was really good.
Yeah, so what's up with
Really
Boyle? Why
good.
don't we talk real quick? What's so good about
Yeah,
him?
what's so good about Boyleton?
So he gets, no matter what unit, if it's a phase 1 or phase 2, he gets Guardian 1. So, and that's for it's anybody. It's not like Guardian Commander, Guardian Trooper, whatever. It's
Mhm.
anybody, any trooper unit, excuse me, that gets shot around him, you can Guardian it if there's a range 1 of him. Which also, that's on a squad, it's nice to have Guardian because then you can spread them out really well. So normally you can spread them out either behind line of sight or at least heavy cover, preferably line of sight. And he just has to have line of sight to the unit he's guarding, and then boom, he can take a hit, and then you're still rolling a red save. And because normally the unit with Boyle in it, its whole job is to be a battery, you don't really care. Like even if you blank out on your job or on your roll, Boyle's still doing his job. It's fine. Like win or lose, it's still a win. And then especially with a phase 2, you're rolling a surging red save. So sometimes your Guardian roll is better than your unit that's getting shot.
Sometimes
If an RPS phase 1's getting shot and Boyle's in a phase 2 and rolls it, he's rolling better than the phase 1 would be.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, that phase 1 would still have access to a surge token, but
True.
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line is it spreads out your attrition for
Mhm.
Republic, which is extremely relevant because clones on a per model basis are pretty expensive.
Mhm.
And they also contribute black dice to those attack pools. So
Yeah.
if you can kind of like suck up all that attrition into one unit that you don't care as much about making attacks with, then that's pretty significant. It's also like clones are vulnerable for that reason to Pierce. Pierce
Mhm.
tends to be on small dice pools like snipers or characters, which means often you've only got like one hit coming in at a time anyway. And if you can just eat those on your Boyle unit,
Yeah.
then it really helps your other units kind of stay at full strength. So yeah, Boyle's huge.
It's that weird unit where even if he dies, he's doing his job. Like that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take like the last wound on Boyle. You know, once it's down to like just Boyle with one wound, you just kind of keep him in the back and you dodge aim with him, and you stop taking Guardian hits. But yeah, it's if he takes 4 wounds or 5 wounds, I guess no, he doesn't have 2 wounds.
No, he doesn't. But that's why you put the mortar on.
Right? Yeah.
No, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, or I also like him on the RPS unit because that unit tends to be static. Often you only need the RPS in that pool for fire support anyway.
Right.
So you don't care as much about attrition with that unit. So
yeah, same. I do that all the time. And also, if you have a medic, clone medics are great just by themselves.
Clone medics are amazing.
Bring back if Boyle Guardians loses the Guardian role, and then the medic brings back the guy that died from Guardian. It's like it's really frustrating to play against, but it's really fun.
especially as you generally have to get through some dodges and possibly some other defensive tech to even just make clones roll saves.
Right.
And
Right.
you're like, man, I worked so hard for that save. Yes, it's a blank. Oh, he's coming back.
You have
Yeah,
possibly
like-
barrier coming into the play too.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I rolled 4 hits onto a unit in heavy cover. No, you didn't. You rolled nothing. It's
Yeah.
barrier 2, save 1, guardian the other one, boom, or maybe dodge it, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that would require 6 because you lose 2 to heavy cover.
Yeah.
Um,
And then but then the thing with clones specifically too is that then they shoot back at full strength. Like
Right.
then they just shoot right back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And normally they can dish out just as much as they're taking.
Yep. So let's talk real quick. We kind of already talked about phase 2s. I think for phase 2s, the standard heavy choice is the Z6, unless you have a specific reason to take the mortar. You mentioned the mortar in a Boyle unit, which I think is defensible. For that personnel slot.
Yeah.
Boyle's interesting, obviously, on phase 2s. I think 5s is interesting, a little bit expensive for my taste, but if you're building like a clone fire support list, I think he's still good in that context.
And my argument for 5s into phase 2, just to point it out too, is that what's nice about him is he is the same price in a phase 1 or in phase 2.
Yep.
So for 8 more points, you're really beefing him up.
Yeah, that's a super beefy unit.
Yeah.
And the medic, obviously, also the same price in phase 1s and phase 2s. And a great option for either personnel slot.
And a combatant, so adds a black die.
Dice. Yeah. The phase 1s, I think, actually all of the heavy weapons except for the DP-23 are good options. I think phase 1s might have the most diverse set of like competitive heavy weapon options of all the core units.
That's fair.
Because I think three of the 4 are not only like justifiable but somewhat commonly taken.
I was very firmly in the DC-15 because that critical 2 red critical really starts to eat stuff up. My only thing is now with all armor and dark troopers around, I've leaned more towards RPS recently. But if we see,
I don't think you want more than 1 RPS though.
I normally go 2, but I understand what your point is.
Fair.
Though,
yeah.
I would never do more than 2.
If you do take the DC-15, I would find a way to fill that personnel slot so you can get an extra dice, whether that's the medic or the captain. Just because the DC-15 pool it really turns it up to 11 when you add an extra dice onto that pool.
True.
Otherwise, it's just like a 6 dice pool, and that's you take 1 to 2 casualties, and that starts to look pretty sad pretty quick.
Not with Boyle.
Right, sure. But I've found the DC-15 to be a lot better in the 6-man unit.
That's fair.
Whereas if you're just taking a 5-man unit, then I like the Z6.
That's fair.
Okay, you guys got any other further thoughts on Republic Core?
I don't have a lot of thoughts on Republic.
I know.
I do. We would be remiss if we didn't mention, especially for a 101 episode, fire support doesn't mean you have to fire support every time you shoot. like meaning I've seen people, especially newer players for GAR, that will say like, okay, well, I'm going to fire support this shot. You don't always want to fire support. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Sorry, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Just because you can fire support doesn't mean you have to fire support. There's certainly, optimizing those shots, and that maybe dives a little bit deeper into it, but like think about it before you just be like, I can do the cool thing and I'm going to do the cool thing. Like make sure you're maximizing, like don't fire support another phase 1 shooting because you're hurting yourself by doing that. Don't do that.
Why?
Because with token sharing being what it is now, you're saying, so let's say squad 1 Z6 shoots, they aim and shoots, and then I fire support that Z6, that second Z6. Okay, it's a whole bunch of more dice, but that second Z6 shot could have shared an aim or could have had its own aim to then shoot separately. To me, it feels like you're costing a token.
But you're also counting cover twice instead of once when you don't fire support.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about cover. That's fair.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think you always fire support.
That's a good point, though.
Let's talk about fire support real quick. So the things you're giving up when you fire support is an action. Because if that unit, for example, was going to aim an attack or move an attack, then essentially if they're just adding their dice, that's basically just an attack. You're also giving up a suppression token because it's one attack instead of two. You're giving up potentially tempo at the tail end of a turn because you're combining two actions into one. With the pass mechanic, that's less of a big deal now than it used to be. But, those are significant drawbacks. The things you're gaining are you only count cover once instead of twice. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's big, especially with cover being what it is nowadays. That's totally fair.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yeah. The second primary thing is you're front loading damage to just one activation, which particularly like if you can eliminate something with a fire support, which often you can because those dice pools can become pretty silly pretty quickly. That's a benefit to be able to front load that to the start of the turn, particularly if you shoot something but maybe you only kill it like 80% of the way and then it runs away, then you've lost your opportunity to attack that unit with your second phase one. So yeah, I think there are cases to fire support phase ones for phase ones. Generally, you want to fire support things that surge because you're going to convert, clones don't surge, and you're going to convert all those surges when you do that. So obviously Anakin with Saber Throw is like the token ideal fire support candidate because he surges crit once he plays.
I think Cody's a really big one now.
Yep, Cody
Like
for the
range
same
4
reason.
surge crit. Yeah,
yeah, they both have some form of pierce, right?
Yep.
Padme because she's got sharpshooter and pierce and surge crit.
True.
If she's close enough to something, generally you don't want her to be there.
Right. Yeah, but it can be like end of the game kind of deal or something like that.
Yeah. Barks surge. So those are kind of like the standard token things that you want to be fire supporting.
If you really hate something that has armor, a laser RT fire supporting with a RPS is like impact 5, I believe. So
yeah, I mean, so is Anakin plus an RPS, but
well, sure, but yeah, it's just like if you really hate something with armor, there you go.
Yep.
At range 4, especially.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Echo was great to fire support because he's got access to lethal.
And sharpshooter.
And he's got sharpshooter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, think about those keywords that you can essentially like add on to the front end of a phase 1 pool, and those are your ideal fire support candidates. But don't be afraid to do like a double Z6 phase 1 fire support. If I had a fire support, this is the last time I played Anakin in a tournament, which was quite some time ago, but fully wiped a Magna Guard unit, like a Full the Dead Magna Guard unit, and that's 8 health with red saves. And that was 2 phase 1s. One had a DC 15. It was a 6-man DC 15 unit and a 6-man Z6 unit with a specialist. So it was like
a lot of dice.
What is that? 18 dice? Yeah. With one surge conversion from critical, some other surge conversions from surge tokens, and like I think it was like 2, if not 3 aims, because I did it on Padme's 2-pip turn. So, and it was one of those situations where I was like, roll 16 saves.
Yeah.
And he was like, excuse me? I'm like, yeah, man, do you need to borrow some defense dice? I'm like,
God, yeah.
There's 16 paint right there. Go ahead and roll it.
And then he does, because that's how that game works.
Yeah,
and then he
his
did.
Magna Guard died, Full the Dead.
Yeah.
And
but yeah.
So don't be afraid to do that. You can get some pretty scary pools that way still. But
I will say honorable mention while talking about fire support to the mortar, because I think you got to think a lot less about fire supporting that. Like it's a lot more of a no, to me at least. When I fire support a mortar, it's like I'm still getting critical and suppressive. Great, like yeah.
Adding critical via fire support's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
droids.
Yes, droids.
Ooh, now I can join the conversation. I've actually played these.
So when was the last time you played droids, Jay?
February.
Oh, okay, that's not
somewhat recently.
It's not terrible, yeah.
Yeah, it was the ridiculous 8 B1 list, right? Yeah.
The 95 wounds. The 95 wound
Yeah.
list. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So I think I have a hard time. I have a really hard time right now taking B2s. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah. I don't.
Yes, I guess because of
Yeah.
specifically with all the Dark Trooper counter, it's
Yeah.
just pointless.
Exactly. Your armor 1 doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then the dice you're throwing, I feel like, can be replicated elsewhere within the CIS army more effectively.
Yeah, for me, primarily it's a cost issue. I mean, you're pushing 100 points basically for the type of B2 that works the best for, and I guess we should talk about why. The most functional version of the B2 has the T series personnel upgrade with the B2HA. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first is it gets rid of their AI, which is actually kind of a real problem on B2s since they don't coordinate. So unless you've got override, which is certainly an option, they have a hard time ignoring their AI, which can be a real problem. AI attack is one of the most punishing versions of AI. And then so it gets rid of that AI, so you don't have to worry about that. It adds a range 3 red dice to your range 3 B2HA pool, which is 3 reds and a white with blast, which is actually pretty decent, especially now with how cover works.
Yep.
And you get a surge from reliable, which is pretty important for them on defense since they don't surge on defense, and also makes their attacks quite a bit better for offense. So that's like 3 huge benefits that the T series gives you. Personally, those are all reasons I don't like the B2 ACM. I know the B2 ACM unit is like significantly cheaper, but they're susceptible to AI. They don't have those extra surges, and they have like no attack whatsoever at range 3. So
yeah.
But that unit is almost 100 points, which is just I think too much for a unit with white saves.
That's what I'm saying.
You have to put in.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I was gonna say you have to put it with those with the white saves and everything. Like you have to put in that extra trooper. Like it just doesn't make sense not to.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't really run them naked because it's 3, and it's just like you're like, okay, that's short. That's 6 wounds, but in today's meta, it just, I don't know, they just melt so much faster than they ever did before. Even before Dark Troopers, like I think really what knocked them out of contention was Pikes. Pikes really
I agree with that.
Put them out, and now everything, every list. I mean, besides an Ewok list, I mean, maybe with the ATST, but every list you're looking at how much, impact you're putting in your list.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, well, all right, well, these guys are done. Like,
yeah. And I thought there was going to be some room to play with them simply because they actually benefit quite a bit in interesting ways from some of the new, particularly the wound allocation rules, where like you can stick your T series and your B2HA out there, and you can only take a maximum of 3 wounds at a time while still getting your entire range 3 pool. But it's not enough. Even using that gimmick basically is not enough to justify their cost. So it's sad. I quite successfully ran some mass B2 lists back in the day.
I think B2s are, especially for core, I think they're one of the coolest looking core on the table too.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's just like when people see you playing that, they know it's Star Wars. Not that the other ones don't scream Star Wars as well, but like it really makes people stop and look at them and be like, oh wow, those are cool.
Yeah, they're very aggressive looking, which is good for the table. And I think they had a moment. It was very short, but when the snail, the persuader tank droid came out, the snail tank came out, for a moment it was like, oh yeah, you load your B1s up, deliver them, drop them off, and they just or B2s, and they just start like murdering things. And then that just went away so fast.
Well, and now you just do that with the Black Sun instead and have way better results and way more survivability. And
the Black Sun are like 15 points cheaper. They're more durable and they hit harder.
Right. So yeah, exactly.
You know what's interesting? Okay, here real quick before we get to B1s. I think every core, now that I'm thinking about it, right? Every core unit, except for maybe even them. I was going to say every core unit except for fleets has had their day in the sun. And I think maybe the fleets had like a moment with the bus, but then it got taken over by Luke and Sabine. And like,
Yeah.
it
They had a
wasn't
brief
very
moment with the
long.
bus, yeah.
Yeah, it
Also,
wasn't.
I do think when fleets first came out, they had a little bit of a bright spot. Just when they first dropped.
They were functional like when they first released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan used to use them really well back when they first came out.
But yeah,
Yeah, because
just
back
thinking
then they were
about
like
that.
one of the most efficient dice pools for their
Yeah.
cost,
Right.
And one of the only ways to get Pierce.
and one of the only ways to get Pierce besides taking characters. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's
This-
fair though. I agree.
Maybe
Yeah,
their sunlight was short lived compared to everyone else's. It seems they
it's
like
definitely the
yeah,
shortest.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, B2s were good for a solid like
Yeah.
year, roughly
Yeah.
20. I want to say it was 2021.
Mhm.
Like mall
Yeah.
B2s, that was a thing.
All B2s.
Yeah. But yeah, unfortunately right now B2's not very good.
Nope.
So yeah, B1s.
Okay. All right. This is crazy what I'm
Okay.
about to say.
You're always so level-headed. This is so surprising.
Pound for pound, the best core unit in the game. Inexpensive. Fill that purpose of what we talked about in the beginning about bodies. Right? Like it's hard to put them down if you're putting a full squad together. So you've got the 8 generally, you have 8 in a squad.
I think it's usually 7.
So,
yeah.
7 to 8. Okay. All right, 7.
Yeah. No, I would say 7, but yes.
But yeah, I mean, they've got the wounds. They've got, they're cheap. Because what is it for with a B1 with, let's say, the E5C, right? It's 54 points.
With the E5S, but
For
yeah.
55S and the rocket are 56.
Yeah. So for like 7 wounds, I don't know about attack wise, but like if you're looking to just put bodies out, 38
the
points
E5
for 6 wounds.
Their
Yeah.
attacks are fine, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, especially the E5S, right? Like getting that critical in there, especially if something gets into range 3, you're probably going to get at least a critical through. So bare minimum, you're doing suppression, but critical goes through a lot of things. So
But I don't know, pound for pound, I think maybe the best core unit in the game.
I think they're solid. I think they're fine where they're at. I think they're in a good spot, honestly. I think the rest of the CIS is maybe a different story, but I think B1s are okay.
Yeah. And now I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that, but I think if you listener who's sitting there yelling at your radio or your iPod or whatever you're doing,
It's your
iPod.
radio.
I sound so old. Radio.
What's
and
a radio,
iPod.
Jay?
Yes, we're sitting around
You
tell us,
yelling at
Jay,
your
tell us the
phonograph.
stories of the old times.
Could you please
Tell us of
wind
the
up
Fleet
the
Trooper.
stereo? So
It's a fireside chat with Jay.
yeah, but
Okay.
just think about all the boxes that a core unit has to tick. And tell me that B1s don't check every single one of those boxes.
I don't know if I fully agree with you, but I think they're on the they're very close to that, with the caveat that you have to have some way, whether that's direct or HQ uplink or some way to get them orders to make sure that AI doesn't trigger.
Yeah,
Which is easy enough.
They have a
Easy
lot
enough,
of tools
sorry.
for that.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to like intentionally design a droid list that didn't have a way to get B1's orders. I think.
Agree. Yeah. For 10
but
points, you can fix that problem.
You're right. I mean, it's worth talking about because coordinate is one of their primary features. There's 2 things since this is a 101 episode, there's 2 things to consider with coordinate. The first is just that you do have to consider how you're going to get in one order.
Yeah.
The easiest way is probably direct. Both versions of Tactical Droid have that accessible. As you noted, Tim, HQ uplink, that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
I would not rely on just giving them orders from the card to be that order.
Mm-mm.
Because you're going to be giving those orders to something else usually.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is just with positioning. You want to make sure that your B1s are all like close enough.
Yep.
And it
Well,
does.
I think it's more of a trick, right? Because the problem is once you start moving up the battlefield, that I found, right, is that I need to get them in certain positions in order to attack or to be
Yep.
somewhere I need them to be. And I always there would always be at least one unit. I got better towards like by game 4, 5, 6 that I was playing this, but like at the first couple games, I'd be like, oh shit, I left. Like I grouped them over here too far, and I meant to leave this one just like dangling so I could get the range one, but it's always it's never in the beginning that it's a problem
as
because
things start to happen.
you're always planning for that. It's as you start pushing up the battlefield, then you're like, oh son of a bitch. Like
I like to do what I think of as like honeycombing,
mm-hmm.
which if you think of how like a honeycomb works, right, you have the hexes and they're overlapping with each. Basically you want to create overlap so that like it's not just a line where it's 1b1 to the next b1 to the next b1. It's like 1b1 and that b1 is within a range of at least 2 other b1s to the right, and each of those b1s is within a range of 2 more b1s, so that like if you mess up a movement or like one of them gets plastered or something, it doesn't break your chain.
I would say too, again, especially with an HQ uplink kind of deal, I do feel like turn 1, a lot of times I see people pop it just to make an easy order chain, and I don't think I mean, unless you have someone that's just breathing down your neck, I don't think you really need to do that. Like not that it's a huge deal because you can just refresh and move and it's fine, but why pop it when you don't have to? So like if your guys aren't going to be at shooting range, then you don't have to worry about AI triggering. Like
I would say generally it's like it's almost like turn 3 before you're really even considering HQ uplink.
I agree.
In my experience, sorry, Kyle.
I
I know because we've talked about that. Like, make sure the range 1. I'm like, yeah, that's really like when I always when I picked up that B1 crazy B1 list and was going for it. I had all of Kyle's like because Kyle was playing CIS for a long time, and I'm like, okay, and all right, but then once you get going and like turn 4 or 5, usually was where it starts falling apart, and you're like, oh god, what? Okay, I gotta. All right, he's got to be here, and and then I'm like, oh no, I moved my straggler, like,
Yep, I feel you. It's happened to every droid player.
Yeah,
true.
I do want to push back a little bit on the best core unit in the game thing.
Okay.
I know that they're anywhere from 6 to 8 bodies. They're still absolutely made of peanut brittle.
True.
It helps a little bit if you design a list around aggressive tactics, because then you can give them 4 of them those surging saves, and that does help. The way that droid lists are being built these days, particularly with respect to being like centered around operatives, that's not usually done. And just generally the fact that they have white saves in a world where dark troopers exist, I think most droid players' experience against dark troopers is like, even if you have the rockets, B1 shoots a rocket at a dark trooper, maybe you make them roll 2 saves, dark trooper unit takes a wound, dark trooper unit moves up, shoots your B1 unit, picks up the entire thing. So they are squishy. Like, yes, it's a lot of wounds, but every single paint that you get past cover is probably going to be you picking up a B1, and you're picking up fistfuls of B1s. So I get that they're cheap. I get that their attacks are like decent for what you're paying. I get that they can't be suppressed. Obviously they can still panic. They have a lot of benefits. The fact that they're extremely squishy, I think outweighs them. And personally, I think that at least how they fit into the context of their faction, phase 1s, phase 2s, and shores are all better. But B1s are a perfectly serviceable core unit. They're a heck of a lot better than the rebel core units. So
I disagree with you.
That's fair.
I would actually go one farther. I would argue, what are B1s at right now? Naked B1?
Like 38, yeah.
38?
Yeah.
I drop them down a couple of points, honestly. but that's just me. Yeah. Only for B1s because they are made to be like the quote unquote horde factions, the closest we have to a horde faction.
I mean, they used to be 36.
Not anymore.
No.
They're
There's
the,
a-
But
they're
that's
the
the point.
only. I think they're the only core faction core unit, like the only non-mercenary core unit that's got an increase to their base unit card.
No, I
That
think
I
it should
can
go
think
back
of.
down.
That's fair. I can see that.
Yeah. Well, that was during the dark times of the CIS running over everybody, right? So there was
Yeah.
that
I
like
wouldn't say they were
yeah.
running over everybody, but they were definitely winning at a
They're
slightly
winning a lot.
above
They were
50% rate.
Yeah, they
It
were.
was
winning
about
a lot.
55% statistically, which is
Yeah.
really not that crazy, but the game was, I would say the game was, at least between the factions, so well balanced at the time that it
Yeah.
felt like
Can I say something
Wow.
to that? I these guys know, but for you at home, I participate with our Patreon members in our Discord, but generally our regular fifth trooper, like behind the scenes, just our team Discord, I'm not very active in, especially in the competitive channels. But I wanted to bring this up, like watching all you guys build lists and like all the lists I've been thinking about lately too. Man, I was just thinking, I'm like, wow, what a great time to play Legion. There's like there really
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there's a lot of like
You
I
have a lot
don't
of options.
I've
yeah,
been struggling in advance of LSO.
Yeah.
I'm not
But
gonna
like a
lie.
good struggle. Like there's
Yeah.
there's a
because
there's
you
a
have
lot of
options.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's a lot of things I could see. Now I don't have enough practice with all of them, but like there's a lot of things I could see possibly doing well. Like I think Dark Troopers will do well, sure, but like there are a lot of ways to get impact out there and still have a good list
Yeah.
against other things that aren't armor.
yeah, I just think it's great. Like I just wanted to kind of bring that up,
Yeah,
because I was
agree.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. It's a good
We're
time to be a
definitely
Legion
we're
player.
definitely in a better spot now, balance wise, than we have been for
Yeah.
I think just about any point in the last year.
I agree with that.
Um,
well, Tim
All right.
agrees, so we won.
Can we hit mercenaries real quick? Shadow Collective
Yeah,
more
yeah.
specifically, I guess.
Oh, we're still going. All right. Yeah.
There's only
That's
two
the
to talk
last
about here,
guys.
Jay, and I think they're both
That's right.
pretty straightforward because they don't have a lot of options. So,
True.
all right, Black,
Black
Sun,
Sun, go forward.
W key,
Yep, W key,
Uh,
shoot, survive. That's it.
and I think for both of these, you want the personnel upgrade that increases the courage and gives them reliable.
Oh yeah.
Or independent surge, not reliable. Two different things.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Well,
Um,
yeah, and courage too, as well.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So that's the Vigo and the Capo. You definitely want those. Those are big.
Yeah, those are huge.
For Magdets, sorry, for Magdets, for BS, for Black Sun, the popular heavy upgrade is the Magdets, which is the grenade
Yeah.
guy. I actually think, I know he's like way more expensive. I think that you could make the case for the shotgun. I have like an in for a penny, in for a pound thing. Like if you're going to be paying almost 90 points for a unit anyway, I feel like,
Sure.
what's another 14 points? I don't know.
I think that
Mhm.
It's
impact
only
is,
like 12
is
points now.
the impact is so hard to give up though. Like
It is, but
so
range one is
much.
also really short. The shotgun helps them a lot at range two.
Not if the Dark Trooper comes to you. It's fine.
Well, sure, that's fair. I mean, yes, against Dark Troopers, I would definitely rather have the Magnet. But against like a red save army that doesn't feature Dark Troopers, I'd much rather have the scanner gun.
I agree with that.
I don't know. I'm not saying it's better, but I think it's worth exploring, and like nobody's taking it. So
I think any gun with Pierce is worth exploring.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I have let's see, early on when they first came out, Shadow Collective came out. Jeremy, my buddy Jeremy, was running a Vader list with them, and he was running the shotgun, and it was particularly nasty. Like it was real rough to deal with
gross.
that list. Yeah, and then have Vader like coming right behind him. Man, that was a rough list to face. I
Yeah.
think he won a couple like tournaments locally with it, and then he was like, yeah, all right, and then it just kind of like moved on, but like yeah, no, that was yeah, that's a nasty combo for sure.
Yeah, and they're a good candidate for recon until
Mhm.
frag grenades,
Oh, yeah. Any kind of transport.
any kind of transport. Yeah, the boss.
Yeah.
All right, pikes. I think
Pikes.
I think basically
Still
the standard
good.
way to they're still great. The standard way
Still
to take
great.
them is
Mhm.
the capo and the disruptor. I've seen people take the whips because it's so much cheaper. You're giving up so much range damage with them.
I
It made
think-
more sense when Jedis were more
When Jedi were good.
were
Well, I was gonna
stronger.
say,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the only way I shouldn't say the only way, but the main way, if I ever build them with the whips, it's if I have no other plausible melee counter in my list. And I'm thinking like, I want something to counter a melee threat.
And even
then
without the
maybe.
whip, they're still throwing 2 white dice apiece. You probably have a surge.
I'm
from
just thinking of the
independent surge.
immobilize though. I'm thinking
Yeah, the immobilize is fine, but I mean, they can thwack things pretty good with just the stun batons already.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. It's a lot to give up the dice from the disruptor on the ranged attacks.
Yeah, I think and maybe that's a good point too. I think if you're going to bring a whip, you have to bring 2. That's just my opinion, but I
For
think
the double immobilize.
yeah, the double mobilize is just it's too
Yeah.
important. Whereas I'm much more willing to throw a single pike unit with a capo and a disruptor in there in any list.
Hmm.
But if I'm going to bring a whip cord, I'm going to bring 2 of them.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
everybody.
I mean,
Call
I
the
don't know.
core.
We've talked about this before, but like specifically for rebels, oh god, pikes are like a godsend, and I think like a Cassian. I've gone over this many times and shown this list, but I think a Cassian list with pikes is pretty good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Pikes are great in Rebels and in Republic.
mhm.
Jay, build a Cassian Ewok pike list. Do it.
All
Just
right.
do it. I'm not saying it's good. Just do it.
I think you'd run up against the mercenary limitation pretty quickly there.
Oh, for sure, guaranteed. But you bring
you do one
bring
of each.
some schmuck with a command slot and throw Underworld on him. Get a third one in there. Get a third
Okay.
core.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
I'm not saying it's good. Just do it.
No, I don't
The
think it
rebel
would be
player.
good. Yeah.
I don't play rebels. I don't know.
Listen,
throw them all
I'm
together.
gonna be very honest with you guys. I do not plan on playing regular rebels with Ewoks. It's Bright Tree or nothing.
We know.
Yep. We understand.
Yeah.
You've only been saying it for 6 months, so it's okay.
I'll say it every damn podcast, Tim. I'll do whatever I want.
That's always been clear. That's
Yeah.
always evident.
Mhm. Wait till won't you guys be surprised when this goes to air tomorrow and it's just me talking about Ewoks for 2 hours.
Just
didn't talk
override
about it.
everything we recorded and just
Yeah,
record
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
for 2
yeah.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. This week on the Notorious Scoundrels, everyone's fired and Jay talks about Ewoks.
No, better yet, just dub over Kyle and I. We're just saying yub nub and different
Oh, yeah,
Ewok
yeah.
sounds.
All right,
Yeah.
like all right,
have,
like
have our pictures up there, but just have dubs instead of what we're
That's
actually
fine.
saying. Yeah.
it's just
I bet
me
you-
trying to do your voices. Like, yeah, Jay, I really like Ewoks. They're the best.
You're through Science Theater to
Yeah.
3000.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to switch and sell all my units and just buy nothing but Ewoks. This is crazy.
I calculated the odds, and they're the best unit that's ever been created for any game ever. Oh, that's cool, Kyle. Yeah, I'm glad you agree.
That'd be pretty good.
Well,
You should actually do that for just
All
take
right.
some of the outtakes and do that for
Yeah,
a segment.
okay.
that's right. That's right.
Um,
It'd be really confusing for those listening via audio. So
Yeah.
what's going
it
on?
would be. Yeah.
The
What's
hell
going
is
on?
going
What's
on?
happening?
Yeah. But Jay's finally lost it, everyone. Have the cops and an ambulance show up at my house.
Yeah. Are you okay, Jay? I don't think you can
Don't go
commit
that
someone
far.
anymore,
Welfare
can you?
checks. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. No, we just
Thing. All right. Well, on that note, should we?
Yeah.
Should we end this
Yes.
thing? All right.
of
Please.
course.
All right. We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Tim.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Stay cool, Fruit Matt.
Stay you. So much Legion.
So let's get into our Legion 101 segment.
I'll cut that. Sorry.
Is there not still a graphic? There's graphics going on, right? I was pausing for the graphic. If you told me to.
I was about to commend us for doing such a good job pausing for the drop.
I'm trying to be good, Mr. J. To quote Evan.
I'll do this.
All right. Core. All right, I'll be right back.
No, that's fair. It just feels like they can take a lot.
Man, whatever you said, Tim, just upset Kyle so much he just walked off the podcast.
Man, I thought we were vibing.
No, you weren't. He hates you. He just sent me a message.
No, that's fine.
Said if you don't get Tim off this cast right now.
I'm just saying, this is a good conversation.
You can suggest things to me, but don't you dare tell me what to do. I'm just kidding. Everything's fine. I'm definitely not replacing all of you with AI.